My very special guest is the founder, president, and chief strategist of the full service advertising agency Kid Glove. She's also the host of the Agency for Change podcast, which offers a forum to amplify the voice of changemakers everywhere. And now she's the author of the brand new book, Untangling Spaghetti, a branding fable, a guide for business leaders to increase your impact. She is Lynn Weinman. Welcome back to the show, Lynn.
Woo, Matt, thank you. I always love listening to your show. I love being on your show. I just love hanging out with you because you are smart and high energy. And man, that introduction made me feel good. Thank you for that.
We have great conversations. I've learned so much from you, and I can't wait to have you back on the show and talk all about this new book. And maybe that's just where I'll get us started. What inspired you to write this book and this creative take on the importance of branding, something you know certainly a lot about?
Yeah, well, Matt, you inspired me because you and I talked and I read your book, and our mutual friend Joshua Berry wrote a book, and I've always kind of wanted to write a book and I wasn't sure what I would write it on. But we've got this process we've developed at Kid Glove. It's we call it our brand advancement process, and we use it to help build really impactful brand strategies. It's unique to us. And I decided I wanted to put it out there in the world. So, the book actually started as a series of blog posts, but the blog posts never got published because as we put it together, it was like, I think this should be a book, not a series of blog posts. So that's kind of how it all started. That's how we untangled the writing of the book.
Yeah, it's daunting to think about going to create a full manuscript, of course. But you're right. I think that people like Joshua and myself, who've kind of gone through that process, I'm so glad that you did, because books are still such a fabulous way of going deep into a subject,
Yes.
getting some guidance, especially for a kind of a self-help book like yours, where it's just like a series of blog posts just probably wouldn't have done it justice the same way.
Right.
But you can really get deep and roll around in the subject. So I really love that about that.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Yeah. And thank you for being an inspiration. I mean, I remember you and Joshua and others I know, you gave me confidence that I could do it. Right. And I have the benefit of having a great team of creative people. Right. So I didn't do it myself. It's me and the whole team. I have multiple writers that came in and helped out, editors from Kid Glove that helped out, and of course, the designers who helped out as well. And in the book, we had to spin up a whole brand because it's a story about an organization that goes through a rebrand, and they needed a new name and they needed a new logo. So, it was almost like we went through this branding process for this organization we created out of our imaginations.
Yeah, I think just like leadership, no one does it alone. When you write a book,
Yeah.
it's great that you've got a team to lean on that way. And as you mentioned, the book takes this fable, it makes it very accessible. And I wanted to tell us just a little bit more about the situation that Diana and her executive committee were facing, as they open up the storytelling part of the book.
I love that. Matt, I'm such an advocate for storytelling, and there's so much research that relates to the business of advertising and branding that shows us how powerful storytelling can be over just like, give me the list of things I need to do. Because everybody wants to just advance to that page of, give me the list of the things I need to do. So we wanted to tell this through story because we wanted people to really get a sense of what it was like to contemplate, is branding going to help me with the challenges I'm having? So in the beginning of the book, we have Diana Cho. She is an executive business leader. She happens to work for a nonprofit, but you can put yourself in her shoes if you're in a for-profit, a nonprofit, if you're a divisional leader in a corporation. But she had been very gung-ho, very enthusiastic, very successful. And her organization hit a point where things just got harder. They weren't hitting their numbers. They were having a hard time getting their message across. A newer organization in town was getting a lot of the spotlight. And from their standpoint, they had a name that was confusing. And so they were getting other people's mail. And even worse, if you're a nonprofit, they got somebody else's check that they then had to take across town and give to someone else. And that's a situation actually that happens in the nonprofit world. And so She didn't know. She didn't know what her challenge was, and she pulled her executive team together, and they didn't know, and the board had some pressure, and she got a recommendation to talk to her friendly advertising agency about branding. She wasn't sure branding was her problem, but they went through a diagnostic audit together, which is an audit Kid Glove uses. And it really helped point out, where their issues lied and helped start them on the process.
I think you can always tell when you interact with an organization that has a clear sense of its brand. Everything seems very consistent. There's a certain momentum or energy to it. And I think a lot
Yes.
of times we think about brands as if it's like Nike and Apple and these big mega corporations. But I think that even in town, sometimes when you think about specific local businesses too, um,
Yes.
you can think about a coffee shop, could be anything. It doesn't have to be, in my experience, this massive budget and these types of situations. But everything gets a lot easier when you have brand to fall back on because you've taken the time to think about it, and that's what I
Yes.
really like about the fable in that regard.
Yes, absolutely. Matt, we like to say that when you have your brand, a strong brand strategy in place, everything is easier, everything is more effective. And even when you think about in the for-profit world, if you have a strong brand, you're going to be more likely to command a higher price, ward off competitive threats, and set the stage for a stronger internal culture because your people understand you're all, singing off the same song sheet, so to speak.
Yeah, but for as powerful as it can be, it's kinda hard sometimes to approach it, and another reason I really like the fable aspect is that if you just sat down and said, "Okay, let's do some worksheets about your own brand," a lot of times it's very difficult for
Yeah.
people that are kind of in the middle of running a business. So, my first question for you when it comes to this though, Lynn, is why is that? Why is it so hard for us
Yeah.
to think about our own sort of brand promise or design or anything else? Like, what makes it so challenging?
Yeah. I mean, oftentimes as business leaders, we're just too close. We're too close to it. We have in our heads what we want to communicate. But yet, if you don't take the time to balance that out with what do your audiences, what do your audiences currently think about you? Where are they now? And what do they want from you, which is part of our process? If you don't level set with that, you're going to have a hard time really getting clear. I think the other thing is, we've been doing this for 15 years. We've done it for over, I think my last count, 163. And as soon as we're done with this call, I'm going to start on number 164, brand advancement. But we have honed over the years the questions to ask to help get leaders out of their head and really, really focus on what are the key aspects of your organization that need to be communicated. And then we balance that out with audience research. And then we take that the next step and we take a look at you in the universe of your peers. Who do you need to stand out from? And then we define your brand archetype profile. We give your brand a human personality so that you become relatable, and that helps you build trust and consistency.
I think it's so powerful because when you think about brands and when we're so close to it, a lot of times too, if somebody says, we need to do some work to tighten up our brand, where would you even begin? Like if
Right.
you're not in the business, you don't know, and you kind of understand other people's brands, you understand sort of what you like
Yeah.
about them or why you like this one more than that one, or whatever it might be. But I think that just having that sort of process and that experience that you have really, really translated well to the book
Yeah.
itself.
Thank you for that, Matt. I really, really do appreciate that. Sometimes when you talk about branding with a business leader, they will come back and go, "Oh, our logo is fine, or our name is fine, or our name and logo are on too many things. We're not going to change it." I mean, sometimes it's easy just to not change, right? But what we have really learned over time, it's not just that name and logo. It's the messaging that you use, it's the tagline, it's the visual identity, it's how you express yourself in marketing and advertising. And a change to any of those things strategically and in combination is generally going to give you a lift of some sort. Now, a total rebrand with a name and a new logo, There's nothing that says, hey, there's something really innovative and different going on at this organization than a full rebrand. But yet you can improve your brand strategy on many different levels.
I think I've seen this evolution over time as well, that brands used to be fairly plain and,
Yeah.
more recently, it seems like almost every product or service has a little bit more thought put into branding. So now all of a sudden, if we haven't put thought into ours, we're kind of at a disadvantage. I
For
think
sure.
about everything from purple mattresses to, the
Yes.
latest Mando, body stuff. Whatever it is, it's like everybody's like, "Wow, these brands are pretty tight," by the time they
Right.
make it onto television or the radio or
And
large internet campaigns, brands seem to be pretty intact these days. It's pretty wild.
absolutely, absolutely. And that's because there's so much, research, science, and actual results that prove that it works. And I think even today, as leaders become more enlightened, brands become more enlightened, you know, um, organizations are infusing purpose into their brands as well, which I think is a fascinating new development because there's so much research that speaks to the fact that consumers want to align with brands that align with their own value system as well. So I think that's where branding can come in again and be really, really powerful. And, branding can really level the playing field because I think also, you mentioned when we think about brands, we think about, Nike and Haagen-Dazs and, some of those Apple, some of those giant brands. But, what we've done with this brand advancement process is we've taken some of those tools that those big brands use and we've made them accessible to organizations with more modest budgets. And there's nothing more exciting to me. We're working with a brand right now that when they came to us, they said, we hate to send people to our website because our branding on our website is so bad. The website is your number one credibility builder, sales tool. And if you don't have the confidence to send people to your website, you are going to have trouble meeting your goals. And so, we just gave this organization their new name and we're working on their logo. And already you can just feel a lift in their energy and their enthusiasm now towards getting back out in the world and, really having the confidence to present themselves in a way that will be meaningful.
I'm sure you probably find that there's always a story lurking beneath and things that
Oh,
they probably take for granted. And they're like, "Oh yeah, we were founded by somebody who did something incredible." And you're like, "Oh, you're not
yes.
telling that story. Oh my
A-
gosh, like that's amazing." They're like, "Really? Well, we think about it all the time." And
Well,
nobody wants to hear that. And you're like,
absolutely.
"Yes, we do."
Absolutely. Well, another part of our process is the audience research where, we have a proprietary blend of um, multiple choice questions and open ended questions. And one of my favorite parts as we're building a brand strategy is sharing back some of the word for word quotes of people who love this brand. It's so confidence building. And I think, it's very rare that people pick up the phone and call you and go, hey, I really love your brand and it made a difference in my life. No, they always call you when they're angry about something, right? And so for us to be able to share back, this is why people, love your brand and to even be able to go into cases where it's like, your brand changed my life, your brand helped my kids, your brand, makes my life easier. All of that, those are the golden nuggets that come together to make a powerful brand powerful.
Now, it might sound a little bit overwhelming to people who are listening in that you have this process, but at the same time, you've created not just the book itself, which is a very breezy and constructive read, but you've got a companion workbook that's also jam-packed with all these step-by-step exercises. I wonder what led you to think about putting all that extra effort into creating this companion workbook in addition to the book itself?
Absolutely. Well, the companion guide is really the how-to. So if you've got the book, which you can get the book on Amazon, you read the book, and you're right. The book is very intentionally an easy read. It's intended to make you really feel what it's like to go through this process, right? And then you download the companion guide, which in a PDF format or a printed format will actually be much easier to use than in a bound book, trying to write your notes in a bound book. So you can download it. You can use that guide. It's 55 pages, Matt, of some of my very best stuff. But then if you want to take it deeper, we're starting a virtual masterclass, Matt, where we'll coach you through. And actually, I'm going to lead that class. I will coach you through each of the 8 steps of the brand advancement. You'll be in a group, so you've got community to share and advise each other. And we're really excited about being able to offer that process. We amazingly, we practice what we preach at Kid Glove in that we have a nationwide digital marketing campaign to promote Kid Glove for people who are looking for branding and advertising services. And several times a month, I will have someone call who doesn't have the budget to work one-on-one with an agency to do the branding that they know they need. And so what I'm excited about is up until last week when we launched the book, I just had to turn them away. But now I can turn them to the book to give them a taste of what it's like. And if they want to go deeper, they can download the companion guide. And if they want to go deeper, they can go into the class. And if they want to go deeper even yet, we of course would love to work with them in a full one-on-one. But I love particularly in this, at this date and time, in this economy, to be able to give, whether it's a nonprofit, mid-sized business, corporate, division leader that's just trying to, message their specific area within an overall corporate brand to give them the tools they need to move forward.
Yeah, I love that there's that middle option almost where you get a lot more structure. You go through the master class, you go through the workbook in detail. You might say, I'm not maybe I'm the CEO or president of a company, and I'm like, I'm not ready to go into the big exercise just yet, but we want to do something. There's probably some low hanging fruit here, some things we get more clear on, and then down the road say, you know what, now we're ready to lean in and go even bigger. So there's lots of different options in that way. But I also want to pick up on something you said, Lynn. A lot of my listeners probably, may not be at the top of the organization, may not be making decisions for the overarching umbrella brand of the organization, but still might, like you said, run a corporate group or a division or a function or whatever it might be. For those level down leaders, what sort of takeaways or what sort of applications do you see for branding and, their responsibilities within the business?
Yeah. I think you still have to be, you still have to be responsible within the structure of your corporate brand, unless your strategy is to be out on the side. You want to build off that corporate brand, but within the structure of the corporate brand, you need to be able to effectively message and communicate. And so all of these same steps, the visioning, the easy customer research, the competitive review, even the brand archetype profile and the strategy will really help you put that all together. And, what I see often as a mistake, Matt, at all levels of branding is people just trying to start with the creative, right? Like just
Mm.
trying to sit down and write the messaging and develop the visual identity. But truly, if you go through the 5 strategic steps prior to that, you're going to have the building blocks, A, to develop the creative product, B, to sell the creative product to your leaders, because you'll be able to explain this is why we want to go in this direction. And even, sometimes with branding and messaging, sometimes the biggest problem is having the confidence to know what direction to go. And so built into this process are these very specific steps to help build that confidence to make the right decision as well. Because I think one of the hardest things about branding is if you're doing it right, you're probably going to pick something that makes you a little uncomfortable at first because it's different, right? And our brains are kind of wired to go back to the stuff we're comfortable with. But if you want to stand out, just like the name of the book, Untangling Spaghetti, I've had several people say, wait a minute, why didn't you just call this book something about branding? And it's because I want to get your brain thinking a little bit. if I get your attention and you ask why, even for 10 seconds, I win, right? And that's what the branding is all about. And so because I've been through the process, I have the confidence to go forward with something, even if people are like, "Why are you doing that?" Yeah.
Well, I think it's something that showed up in my research as well. I talk about it briefly in my own book, which was around team identity. And a lot of
Yes.
times what we find is that teams that have a strong identity, it makes it easier for team members to sort of incorporate that into their own identity. And it increases
Absolutely.
employee commitment, increases productivity, innovation, everything else, because you feel like you're a part of something. Yet so many times we see like a team that says, oh, we're the accounting team. Well, that's kind of ho hum as far as
Yep.
brands go. Why not go through the exercise a little bit and figure out like what's your team all about? What's
Yeah.
something that can be an internal brand of sorts to kind of say, like, we have a lot of people on this team. We should probably put some effort into thinking about who we are and what we're all about and
Yes.
why it's so great to be part of this particular team. I wish there was a, I hope more corporate internal groups, take advantage of all your great exercises and your
Absolutely.
thinking here to start to say, how do we create some brand momentum, even internally, even if nobody outside of our four walls sees it, we want to feel great about and clear about what it is that we do and why.
Matt, when I was reading your book, I think I cheered when I read that part because yes, 100%. And honestly, I mean, there's also a lot of research that supports the fact that people want to have a purpose, and most people derive their sense of purpose from their work. And so, if you as an employer can really help them buy into their department, to their mission, to their project, that is only going to add to the success.
Hugely, hugely important. I love that. And I think that kind of leads me to my last question for you, which is talking about brand and impact. You talk specifically about that. Like, help us. What's the through line, if you will, between brand clarity? I'll use that term again, or brand strength, and then how it actually does manifest. Can you say just a little bit more about how it shows up in
Yeah.
form of impact?
Absolutely. Well, when we think about creating a meaningful, authentic, and differentiated brand, oftentimes we are leaning into your impact. One of my favorite questions to ask that often stumps people and causes long conversation is, why does what you're doing, whether it's a product, a service, a department, a project, why does it absolutely need to exist in the world, right?
Mm,
And that leads directly to your impact. And so, I think this brings this full circle. Once again, if you've got a strong brand, everything you do is going to be easier and more effective because people are going to understand, they're going to remember it, it's going to stand out from others that are in your consideration set. And that's just going to help you achieve your goals.
nice. I love it. I love it. And I agree with you 1,000%. It's so important now. Something that maybe workers from 100 years ago didn't really look for, but certainly today we do. We want to make sure that we can have an impact on something bigger than ourselves. And that brand sort of centrality or that weight, that gravity of the brand can really help us get clear about that and feel good about that when we do make that impact in the world. I love it. Well, you know me,
Absolutely.
Lynn, part of my brand is all about trying to have a little bit of fun too. We talk about
Yes.
some pretty heavy subjects, but I think at the same time, I like to have a little fun. So I want to shift gears on us and give us a trivia question. You and I are a team. We've got AI that's going to pose us a trivia question.
Oh my
This one's
goodness.
all about spaghetti. So here's our question. Which of these ingredients is traditionally not found in a classic Italian carbonara sauce for spaghetti? Now it's multiple choice. So we've got,
Okay.
is it A, eggs, B, cream, or C, pecorino romano cheese?
Oh my
Eggs,
goodness.
cream, or pecorino romano in a carbonara? What do you think? I don't know.
Matt, in the book, in the introduction to the book, it is funny because I admit that I don't cook, and my teenage rebellion was to refuse to learn to cook. And my cousin Anne had to teach me how to make spaghetti as I was preparing for a date with my husband. But I like to eat carbonara, and therefore I'm going to guess that eggs are not an ingredient in
All
carbonara.
right. I love it. Listeners, if you're playing along at home, lock in your answer. Is it A, eggs, B, cream, or C, pecorino romano cheese? And it says the answer here, not quite. While eggs are definitely a key component of carbonara, they're not the ingredient I was thinking of. Oh, look at that. So there we go. So
All right.
I'll give you a much better question, Lynn, which is where can my listeners go to learn more about the book and all about your masterclass coming up?
I love it. Now, there's a question I can answer, Matt. We have got information on our website, kidglove.com/brand advancement. Will take you straight to a page that will give you a deep dive into the class, a link to buy the book. The book is on Amazon. And also, if you want to talk to me about branding, a link right there where we can set up an appointment and talk some branding, because you could probably tell I could talk about branding all day long.
I love it, Lynn. I would take you up on that, but I know our listeners have very busy working lives, so we're going to let them go. But I really appreciate you sharing all those resources. Listeners, I'm going to have those links for you in the show notes. So you're only one click away from getting over to Lynn and learning all about her book and all about the workshop. Thanks so much for taking us to school when it comes to all things branding, Lynn. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. I always enjoy conversation with you.